Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with Part 21, the Book of Formation, Book 4, the Written Word of Kabalism, First Period, from the Doctrine and Literature of the Kabalah, by Arthur Edward Waite. 2. The Book of Formation. In developing the Kabalistic doctrine of the instruments of creation, in describing the paths of wisdom, and in attempting to determine the date of the Book of Formation, in connection with our investigation as to the authority of the Kabalah, we have nearly exhausted the subject of the tiny treatise, which is regarded by most scholars and by every occultist as the nucleus of all Kabbalism. It is difficult, however, to omit it in giving an account of the documents. And it will perhaps be best to begin this brief bibliographical notice by a summary of the points which have been determined previously concerning it. The legend which attributes it to the patriarch Abraham, who transmitted it orally to his sons, by whom it was perpetuated in turn till the sages of Jerusalem committed it finally to writing, so that the tradition might not perish even when the chosen people seemed themselves on the eve of perishing. This, we have seen, is legend. It is interesting and respectable in its way. At the period when we first hear of the existence of such a tract, it was possibly already old, and most old books have myths designed to explain them. Those who take the myths historically convert honest legend into something approaching farce. We must be content, therefore, to say that the Sefer Yetzirah is first mentioned probably in the 9th century. There is some reason to suppose that it is quoted in the Talmud, but it is not wholly certain. It may have antedated its first citation in literature by a generation, a century, or an age. Let us realize that we do not know, and that those who judge the question dogmatically on either side deserve to be classed as intemperate. Let us now look a little more closely at the work itself. It is divided into 5 chapters, the first being concerned with the office of the Sephiroth in creation, and the remaining 4 with what have been termed the instruments, namely the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. It was after the revelation of these mysteries to Abraham that he received the manifestation of God, and that the covenant was instituted. According to the expression of the original, God bound the 22 letters on the tongue of the patriarch and discovered to him all their secrets. The symbolism of the Book of Formation, having been sufficiently considered in the second part of our inquiry, there are only 2 points which require to be noted here. One is the absolute distinctness between God and the instruments of creation, whether numbers or letters, which is established by this early Kabbalistic work. Separated from all number and transcending all expression, he is represented as a faithful king sojourning in eternity and ruling the Sephiroth forever from his holy seat. The second point concerns the emanation of the Sephiroth, to which, in preference to their creation, all later Kabbalism inclines. There is little on the face of the Book of Formation to countenance this view. They appear as the instruments and servants of the King of Ages, informed by whose word they go forth and, returning, fall prostrate in adoration before the throne. It is said, however, that their end is joined to their beginning, as the flame is joined to the firebrand, and perhaps the principle of emanation is contained implicitly in this statement. We have no reason for rejecting a construction which has been adopted invariably, but it is just to draw attention to the fact that the first work which mentions the Sephiroth leaves this point in obscurity, while it certainly depicts God as the active architect of the universe, who graved, sculptured, and builded. The first Sephirah is described as the Spirit of the living God, the blessed and again blessed name of God living eternally. Voice, Spirit, and Word, these are the Holy Spirit. 2 is the breathing of the Spirit. The 22 letters depend here from, and each one of them is spirit. 3 is the moisture which comes from the breath. Herewith God sculptured and engraved the first lifeless and void matter. He built Tohu, the line which circles snake-like about the world, and Bohu, the concealed rocks embedded in the abyss whence the waters issue. This triad of the spirit, the breath, and the water corresponds to the conception subsequently formed of the Atzilutic or archetypal world. 4 is the fire which comes forth from the water. With this God sculptured the throne of honor, the Ophanim or celestial wheels, the holy animals, that is, the 4 living creatures, and the other serving spirits. Within their dominion he established his habitation. This numeration seems to contain in itself the conceptions of Briah and Yetzirah, the archangelic and angelic worlds. It should be remembered, however, that the Book of Formation is concerned only with the sphere of operation tabulated subsequently as the third world of Kabbalism, as each sephira was supposed to contain all the sephiroth. So there was a superincession of the four worlds, which were all contained in each. The arrangement of the Sefer Yetzirah does not exhibit this clearly, but the numerations from 5 to 10 inclusive must be held to represent a sire. 5 is the seal with which God sealed the height when he contemplated it above him. He sealed it with the name EEV. 6 is the seal with which he sealed the depth when he contemplated it beneath him. He sealed it with the name IV. 7 is the seal with which he sealed the east when he contemplated it before him. He sealed it with the name EIV. 8 is the seal with which he sealed the west when he contemplated it behind him. He sealed it with the name VI. 9 is the seal with which he sealed the south when he contemplated it on his right. He sealed it with the name V. 10 is the seal with which he sealed the north when he contemplated it on his left. He sealed it with the name EV. The 10 numerations are finally classed together under the one title of Ineffable Spirits of God. The sealing names are combinations of 3 letters, successively transposed, which enter into the name Tetragrammaton. The Sefer Yetzirah was published at Mantua in 1592, but the Latin translation of Postel had preceded it by 10 years. The Mantua edition was accompanied by 5 commentaries. Another Latin version will be found in the collection of Pistorius. It is ascribed to Ruclinus and Riccius. In 1642, a further edition was published at Amsterdam in Hebrew and Latin by Ritangelius. It was issued by Meyer at Leipzig in 1830 with a German translation and notes, and at Frankfurt, 1849, with a German translation and commentary by L. Goldschmidt. In 1887, Dr. Papus made a French translation to which he added the 32 Paths of Wisdom and the 50 Gates of Intelligence. With characteristic sincerity, he admits that this was superseded by Meyer Lambert in 1891. The one question which now remains for consideration is how we are to account for the importance attributed by occultism to such a work as the Sefer Yetzirah. Do its defenders believe that the combination of Aleph with all the other letters and all the rest with Aleph, Beth with all the others and all the rest with Beth, etc., etc., actually produced the universe? That seems an insupportable assumption. Do they regard the letters as symbols of forces, and hold that the Sefer Yetzirah teaches that the universe originates in the orderly combination of certain forces? That is reasonable enough, but it is a commonplace which seems scarcely worth stating, and certainly does not require a secret tradition to secure it. But do they consider that the letters represent occult forces of a fixed, determinable character, and that initiation into the real meaning of Kabbalistic tradition will discover their nature, explaining thus the secret behind the arbitrary doctrine of a virtue inherent in words and letters? This might indeed be valuable, but I have never met with an occultist who took such a view or had anything to substantiate it, if he did. In the absence of any light on this point, we can only conclude that it is the arbitrary doctrine in question which accounts for the interest taken in the Sefer Yetzirah. But the truly occult student, as I have defined him at the outset of this inquiry, can only be scandalized at the childish nature of Yetziratic tabulations. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.